You guys could.
It's live.
Okay, good. Vach. Share with you an incredible story. It's a really long story, and I hope we'll be able to go through it tonight. But you can't really go through the story without the details, because it's the details of the story that give you not just the background, but it makes it real. And this is a authentic story that was passed down from the Baal Shem Tov, from one Rebbe to the next until our generation. And the previous Rebbe writes that his uncle, Rabbi Zalman Aaron, brother of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, wrote down all the stories that he got from his father and from his father before. And this story I'm going to share with you is from Book 8, Story 183. Just mentioning to you that it's not just a story of the Baal Shem Tov. This is a story with a source, with details. So the story begins like this. There was a Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov whose name was Moshe Meshel, and he was sent to a city called Lvov. And the Baal Shem Tov gave him 2 letters. One letter he was supposed to give to the famous genius and Torah scholar, the author of the work called Shael's Shuvas of Chaim HaKohen, Rabbi Chaim Rappaport. And another letter he was supposed to give to another man who was a hidden tzaddik, a secret tzaddik. His name was Rabbi Chaim Yisrael the Potter. He was an unassuming man. No one knew that he was a hidden tzaddik, but he was, and he was called Chaim Yisrael. So when a Moshe Meshel arrives in Lvov with his letter he wants to give to Rabbi Rappaport, he comes to the court, the Bezdin, the Jewish court of Reb Chaim, and he wants to speak to him, and everyone there, there's a big tumult going on. What's going on? They told him that Reb Chaim is not available now because he's trying to figure out what to do, because the Archbishop Mikolsky made a decree that all of the Siddurim, all of our prayer books, we have to tear out from the prayer book the prayer Aleinu Shabeach. The prayer Aleinu Shabeach, we thank God for our true religion. And this Archbishop made a decree that everyone has to take out of the books, rip out Aleinu. And if they won't rip out Aleinu, then Morati Achrisam Chas Hashem, then they will punish everyone with death. So this apparently bothered the Archbishop, this prayer, because in this prayer we express how Judaism is true and real, and he took that as an insult to his religion. Either way, that was a decree that he made, and Rabbi Rappaport and all the other dignitaries of the city of Lvov were trying to figure out, what do we do about this decree? What should we do? And they decided, this was a Thursday. Moshe Meshel arrived there on a Thursday, and they decided that they are going to make a fast day on the next Sunday, and it's going to be a fast where they'll blow the shofar. Not every fast, we only blow the shofar Shoshana Yom Kippur, but also if there is a great need, a shofar is blown on a fast day. But since this is such a tremendous, frightening decree, they're going to make it a Sunday a fast day, and they're going to blow the shofar. But Rabbi Moshe Meshel was unable to give the letter to Rabbi Rappaport from Baal Shem Tov, so instead he went to give the other letter to the potter, the hidden tzaddik, Reb Chaim Yisrael. He gives a letter to Reb Chaim Yisrael. Reb Chaim Yisrael proceeds to go to the Archbishop Mikolsky with his mission to the Baal Shem Tov. Meanwhile, Reb Moshe Meshel goes back to the Goyen, goes back to the Chaim Rappaport's house, and Chaim Rappaport returned from the Bezdin, from his personal courthouse. He'd gone home, and Rav Moshe Meshel gives him a letter from the Baal Shem Tov. Rav Chaim Rappaport, whenever he got something from the Baal Shem Tov, he considered that day to be a holiday. He would make a special meal. He would omit all the confessionary prayers. It was for him a day of celebration. He got a letter from the Baal Shem Tov. And although his students didn't hear exactly what the letter was about, but they knew if the Baal Shem Tov sent him a letter, that's why he's so happy. And he made a Sudas mitzvah, he made a meal and a celebration. And he still, of course, was very upset because they had no idea what to do about this terrible decree. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Reb Chaim Yisrael gets this letter from Baal Shem Tov, and the letter instructs him to go to the Archbishop Mikulski and to warn him that if he will not annul this decree, he will have a bitter end. He goes to the Archbishop Mikulski, and this was on Friday morning, and he tells him that he better annul the decree or else. The Archbishop Mikulski scorns him. Who are you? What are you talking about? And that Sunday, he was in the church, and he walked down some area in the church. He slipped, he broke his leg, and he broke his arm. And when he did, he remembers who this Chaim Yisrael was. He remembers he had seen, the Archbishop remembers, I saw this guy before. When did he see him? In the city of Podolsk, there was another priest named This priest Dambuski, he had years and years before, when Archbishop Mikulski was in Podolsk, they had made a decision, all the priests together, led by this head top bishop, Dombisky, that they're going to burn all of the books of the Talmud. They're going to burn all the books of Torah. And they got all of their congregants to go through all the synagogues and to gather all the books of Torah, all the actual Torah scrolls, together with all the Sidurim. And they had literally dozens and dozens of people preparing a huge edifice where they were going to burn all the Torah scrolls. And they put the Torah scrolls on this altar. The Baal Shem Tov then sent this same Chaim Yisrael to warn this Dambuski that if he doesn't cease and desist, he will die. He'll die immediately. Dambuski, like Mikulski, he ignores him, and he announced that in addition to burning all the books of the Torah, in addition to doing that, they're also going to make a pogrom and destroy all the Jewish families and attack them. And if the Jews will not produce a tax that will pay for the renovations of their church, then the priest will release all of his congregants upon the Jewish villages to destroy all the Jewish villages. So thousands of people gathered there to see the spectacle of the burning of the Torah scrolls, and then, in case the tax would not arrive, there's a huge tax and expected to arrive, all the non-Jews gathered were ready to go let loose, and the whole mob was going to go throughout the Jewish villages and plunder and hurt and kill and steal. So this is all going through the memory of this Archbishop Mikulski, the one who had decreed that I know it's hard to. Let me recap for a second. We have two different stories over here. We have a decree to rip out Aleinu from the Sidurim, and this was made by a bishop named Mikulski, and he was about to implement this decree, but he was warned by the secret tzaddik he better stop, and he broke his leg and he broke his arm, and before he implemented the decree, after he broke his leg and arm, he remembered, I saw this guy before. This guy who warned me, the guy who was caused me apparently to break my leg and arm. I remember he was the guy who warned my mentor, Dambuski. He warned him not to burn the Jewish books. And at that occasion, when Dambuski got the warning, he told Chaim Yisrael, I don't care about your warning. I don't care about who sent you. I'm going to do this. So it was Tuesday morning. This is all in the memory going through in this archbishop was about to rip out from all the Sidurim Aleinu and about to let a mob out against the Jewish people because they're reciting Aleinu. He is going through this whole memory of his, and he realizes that he better not mess with this guy, because what happened to Dambuski was, Dambuski walked out of the church. He was honored to light the fire, to burn all the Svarim, to burn all the Torahs, and he was walking towards the pier where all the Torahs were set up, and he had this torch and he was going to burn all the Torahs. And as he's walking there to light the fire, he suddenly died. So this Malkulski remembers, I better not mess with this Chaim Yisrael guy. This guy, he may look like a small, simple guy. He ain't small and simple. What he says happens. He sees this. He broke his arm and leg. So he remembers how then at that time all the non-Jews felt that we better not make this program against the Jewish people. Their God is protecting them, and everyone was frightened seeing the priest die so quickly, so out of nowhere. Everybody ran away, and the whole plan was disrupted. So Makulski is thinking, I better not do this. So he makes an announcement, guys, say Aleinu whenever you want, daven whatever you want. We are not touching you guys. Do whatever you want. You know the whole decree. So the Baal Shem, so Reb Chaim Rappaport said that although the fast was only made because of this decree against saying Aleinu, however, since a fast began, they took a vow to make the fast, they should not interrupt the fast. They should finish the fast. They'd all resolve together, men, women, and children, the oldest resolve together. They're going to say Aleinu, and whether alive or dead, and now the decree was annulled, they should still maintain the fast, but that night, all the synagogues in Lvov should light candles like it's a holiday, and they should recite Aleinu with the tune that the Maharal made for the high holidays that we'll soon sing another month from now. Rosh Hashanah, Aleinu l'Shabeach. That tune was instituted by the Maharal. So that night, instead of the decree being implemented, all the Jews are celebrating, Sasim and Simcha, they're happy, they're able to recite Aleinu l'Shabeach, and they are all joyous. Now, Reb Chaim Rappaport's letter from Baal Shem Tov, getting back to that story. Chaim Rappaport got a letter, and Chaim Yisrael got a letter. Chaim Yisrael's letter was about this decree, and that was taken care of. Now Reb Chaim Rappaport got another letter from Baal Shem Tov. What did his letter say? His letter, the Baal Shem Tov told him that on a Wednesday in the month of Tammuz, he is to travel about 36 miles to the east of Lvov, and there he's going to see the Baal Shem Tov. He's going to see the Baal Shem Tov suddenly in the middle of some forest, 36 miles travel away from Lvov. And when he sees the Baal Shem Tov, he is supposed to learn the first 4 chapters of Maimonides' Laws of Blessings. And on the day of his journey, he is to eat breakfast early. He is supposed to make sure to get up, although he may be very tired, he's to make an effort to get up early and not to get too tired, and go there and study those first 4 chapters of Maimonides and Laws of Blessings. Then he is to daven mincha. When he finishes mincha, he's supposed to go home. Rav Moshe Meshel is supposed to go with him on this journey. Rav Moshe Meshel should not say a word to anybody on the day before they go out on this trip. He shouldn't say one word to anyone about anything for a whole day before. While they're traveling, he is supposed to read the first section of Genesis. Then he's supposed to read the story of the splitting of the Reed Sea. Then he's supposed to read the section of Torah Hazinu, and make sure to take a cup, because Reb Chaim Rappaport may get thirsty. Make sure to take a cup with you in case Reb Chaim Rappaport gets thirsty. So they set out on this journey. They have no idea why they're going on this journey, but Reb Chaim Rappaport was unusually busy with his efforts for the community, and he was very tired, but because Rav Moshe Meshel stood on guard, he made sure he got up early, he prayed early, he had breakfast, and they go into the wagon. All of a sudden, when they go in the wagon, all of the skies are full of clouds. It starts to rain. In addition to the rain, the wagon starts having many, many problems. a wheel falls off the wagon. The straps connecting the horses to the wagon rips. The horses are not following. Everything that could go wrong is going wrong. For hours and hours, the wagon driver is trying to get the horse and wagon to go, but he can't, and he just loses all of his energy and he sits down. He can't do this anymore. Meanwhile, there's torrents of rain coming down, thunder and lightning, and so Ramesh Meshel, he has to take the reins. He takes the reins, and as soon as he holds the reins, the horse and wagon goes off to the side of the road into a ditch. He and the wagon driver again trying to pull the wagon and the horse off back onto the road. They successfully get the horse and wagon back on the road. And after hours and hours and hours of travel, they finally, at 2:00 in the afternoon, finally arrive. They finally see the Baal Shem Tov standing at the place that he said, at 36 miles away to the east of the city of Lavav. They will see the Baal Shem Tov. They saw the Baal Shem Tov standing there, and they stopped the wagon. Reb Chaim Rappaport proceeds to walk out of the wagon. The moment he comes out of the wagon, it was already raining and torrents and thunder and lightning, but it suddenly got so much worse that the wagon driver tells Reb Chaim Rappaport, "I can't stand this. I'm frightened. What should I do?" So Reb Chaim Rappaport just nonchalantly says that God is causing us to fear him, and he goes and he sits down about 100 feet to the side of the road. He sits down with the Rambam. He starts to study the Rambam. The moment he opens up the Rambam, all of a sudden clouds are clear, as if nothing happened. All of a sudden the skies are clear, and he was very thirsty. The area that they were in, that on the side of the road, they could tell that this was once the estate of someone. There was a lot of buildings there. There was it was a whole sprawling estate, and there were some old buildings. They didn't know what this was, but there was something significant there years before, and they saw that their Chaim Rappaport was very thirsty, and they went to go find water for him. They found a little wellspring, a little bit away from there, and they came back and they brought him the water. And Chaim Rappaport drinks the water. They pray the mincha prayer. They go back into the wagon. And Reb Chaim Rappaport offered Ramesh Meshel to stay for Shabbos, but the Baal Shem Tov had told Ramesh Meshel, the moment the mission is done, come back to me, the Baal Shem Tov, immediately. He goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. He travels back to the Baal Shem Tov. He arrives back at the Baal Shem Tov, at the courtyard of the Baal Shem Tov. Gevach Shalom. He arrives at the courtyard of the Baal Shem Tov. Gevach David. Gevach Charles. Gevach Rabbi Reber. Okay. So he arrives at the courtyard of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov tells him, without saying anything, the Baal Shem Tov says to him, "I want you to say the whole Tillim 3 times. Say the whole Tillim once before you pray, then say the whole Tillim twice. Don't speak to anybody, and don't have, I guess this was a normal thing to have every day in those days, don't drink tobacco until after Ma'ariv. Say Az Yashir 1 time, say Hazinu 2 times, and that's what Hashem told him. Okay. In the month of Elul, beginning of Elul, Reb Chaim Rappaport himself visits the Baal Shem Tov, and he tells Baal Shem Tov that from the moment after he went on this mission to study the laws of blessings from the Rambam, and that location, that mission, wherever that mission meant, he suddenly felt an openness in his heart and his mind to serve God. He suddenly felt like he gets it. He gets Torah. It's different. And he wants to thank the Baal Shem Tov for this honor of being part of this mission, because certainly, said Reb Chaim Rappaport, I merited to get the light of some holy neshama. The Baal Shem Tov then tells Reb Chaim Rappaport the story. What was going on over there? So Baal Shem Tov said, in the time of the Maharal lived before the Baal Shem Tov, about 160 years before the Baal Shem Tov. There was a man named Shmuel Tzaddik. Shmuel Tzaddik was a brilliant Torah scholar, but he scorned the teachings of Kabbalah. He scorned people making too much a big deal about mitzvahs. He didn't think that people honor mitzvahs too much, in his opinion. And he had 2 sons. He had a son named Moshe and a son named Yehuda Aryeh. And he educated his sons in his way. He educated them to be the same as him. He was very knowledgeable, and he was a student of the Maharal. But although he was a student of the Maharal, and the Maharal wrote a lot of works about ethics, he didn't pay attention to any of the books of the Maharal about ethics and the philosophy. He just liked the scholarship of the Maharal, but not the philosophy and not the instruction of the Maharal. So Reb Shmuel Tzaddik is living in this town, and a question comes up. One of his friend's wives has a question on the laws of family purity. She gives him a bedika cloth to check. He checks it and says it's kosher. For whatever reason, she mentioned this to a friend of hers, and her friend looks at it and she says, this is the same exact thing happened to me, and it wasn't. The rabbi said that this is considered not kosher, and we have to separate. So she's so upset. She goes to the court of the Maharal, and she asked him, what should I do? I made this mistake. This Rabbi Shmuel Tzaddik said it's okay, but it wasn't okay. What should I do? The Maharal's patience ends. He summons Reb Shmuel Tzaddik, because what are you doing? So Shmuel Tzaddik was a great genius. So he proves with the laws of the Torah, with his genius, he proves how indeed it was pure according to his opinion. Maharal is very angry at him. The Maharal says, I'm using words in English to describe tzaddikim. The Maharal rebukes him. I shouldn't say he's got very angry at him. The Maharal rebukes him and says to him, you are a reincarnation of the student in the time of the Talmud who was able to say a reptile is pure with 190 reasons. You found 190, there was some student in the time of the Talmud who was able to find 190 reasons why a reptile is not considered an impure animal. So Maharal is saying, you're way, way off. Now Shmuel Tzaddik is very insulted, and he moves away from Prague and he comes to Lvov. Shmuel Tzaddik's children, his son Reb Moshe was like his father, very intelligent, very wise, very into all kinds of wisdom, not just Torah. And his younger brother, Yehuda Aryeh, wasn't so into these wisdoms as much as his father, but he was very knowledgeable too, and he took over the businesses. His father was very wealthy, and when his father passed away, Yehuda Aryeh took over all the businesses. Reb Moshe, he focused on his studies, but he wasn't into the religion part. He scorned religion, he scorned Torah mitzvahs, and his wife couldn't handle his rejection of Judaism, and she died. He married someone not Jewish, and meanwhile, his brother, Yehuda Aryeh, was very broken being around his brother who had left Judaism. And although he wasn't such an old man, he started getting old very quickly, seeing what's happening to his brother. And the doctors advised him to leave and to go back to live somewhere else, because just he's having grief seeing what his brother is doing. He should just go away from his brother. He shouldn't hang around. He listens to the doctors. And at this time, there was a great argument about the teachings of Kabbalah. Before the Baal Shem Tov, there were a few other tzaddikim which had the name Baal Shem. The first of which was Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem, who was a great proponent and a great teacher of Kabbalistic wisdom. And many rabbis sought to excommunicate him, but the Maharal himself defended him, and he checked him out, and he realized that this man is not someone who needs to be excommunicated. On the contrary, he is something really a gift to the Jewish people, and his teachings will give light to the world, said the Maharal, to light the Jewish people, and therefore his teachings should be encouraged. At this time, the Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh, who had brought his family back to Prague, he was looking for a teacher of his sons and grandsons, and he found that Yom Tov Lippin Heller. Yom Tov Lippin Heller was the famous Tosfos Yom Tov. In every edition of the Mishnayos of a Mishnah, you have the Bar Tanura and the Tosfos Yom Tov. Tosfos Yom Tov, Rabbi Yom Tov Lippin Heller, he was a student of Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem, and the Maharal encouraged the teachings of the Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem, and therefore Rabbi Yom Tov Lippin Heller, who was a student of the Maharal, also studied from Yoel Baal Shem. So Rabbi Yom Tov Lippin Heller, together with Rabbi Yehuda Arya's grandchildren and children all studied together. Though Rabbi Heller was head and shoulders beyond the other students, but he studied as if he was, like a little like a regular student, comparing to Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem. So they're all students of his. He had 27 students in this yeshiva. Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem was very happy with his yeshiva. He said the 27 students that he has are like the 27 letters of the Torah. Anyways, Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh was he calmed down, his health got better, but unfortunately, living back in Prague, he met some of his father's old acquaintances. He met a man named Elimelech. Rabbi Elimelech was a close friend of his father's, and when he had already become blind, and he already is older, he became blind, he became a little bit deaf, and when he started Yehuda Aryeh, he met Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh, a friend of a son of his friend. He started talking to him, saying, your father really made big mistakes in his life. He always scorned the teachings of Kabbalah. He always scorned mitzvahs. I think he made a huge mistake by scorning all these things. I think that he should have respected this. And I think that as a punishment for what he did, he has a son like your brother who left Judaism. It's all because of your father. And he didn't know what he was doing to Yehuda Aryeh because, again, he was blind. He didn't realize he was killing Yehuda Aryeh. Yehuda Aryeh is listening to all these terrible things about his brother, and that's why he left Lvov. And now coming back to Prague, he hears from this man, Rabbi Elimelech, all about his, and it's killing him. It's making him sick. On one of his visits to his father's friend, Rabbi Elimelech, he still would visit him because he was his father's friend. And on one of his frequent visits to his father's friend, Rabbi Elimelech, he took with him his grandson, Rabbi Avram Moshe. Avram Moshe was studying in this yeshiva together with Rabbi Yontel Lippman Heller, together studying from Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem. And one of the visits of his grandfather to Rabbi Elimelech, he hears Rabbi Elimelech say to his grandfather, your brother has left Judaism. It's all because your father's fault. And Rabbi Avram Moshe realizes that there's a lot of his family history he doesn't know. He didn't realize how far his great uncle had left Judaism, and he didn't realize who his great grandfather was. And he was very upset to hear this, especially because he was very well versed in the books of ethics and the books of Kabbalah. He had memorized the entire book of the Ramak, Ramesh Kardavari. He memorized the entire Ramak. And he knew what happens to souls in heaven. He knew that when the soul goes to heaven and they have acted in the way of scorning mitzvahs, he knew that this doesn't bear well for you in the world to come. And he was really upset. He was trying to think, what could he possibly do to help the souls of his great grandfather and he didn't know what to do. So he went to Rabbi Heller. He asked him what to do. Rabbi Heller told him that he will send 3 of his students to the grave of his grandfather and his great grandfather, and there at the grave of his great grandfather, they will think about all these Kabbalistic meanings of things, and that will be a blessing for his Zaydas Neshama. And in addition to that, said Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem, he said to Rabbi Avram Moshe, this is the grandnephew of Rabbi Moshe who had left Yiddishkeit. He said to him, you should go to your great uncle's house, and you should there in the great uncle's house, you should try to bring him back to Judaism. Don't eat from his house. Everything that there is not kosher. Don't even use water from him. Rabbi Moshe was living in a very unusual lifestyle. He had left Judaism, but he loved Torah. He kept on studying Torah despite the fact that he left Judaism. He still was so into Torah study. Whenever someone came to his house, a Jew would come to his house, he would give them charity, and he would invite them, he would talk to them, especially when a Torah scholar came to his house. He would discuss with him Torah. And so when this Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem told his great nephew, told this Rabbi Avram Moshe, don't tell your great uncle who you are, but on the second day when you arrive, put up a mezuzah in the house and say the verse that we say in Ashrei, Your great goodness we will remember, and your righteousness we will sing. We will sing about your righteousness. Say that pasuk and think about a certain Kabbalistic meaning that I will tell you. So he goes on in this journey. Rabbi Moshe arrives at his great uncle's house, and he greets him. He's not wearing a yarmulke. He's not religious at all, and he says to him, "Shalom Aleichem, welcome to my house. You can't eat anything here. Nothing here is kosher, but I love Torah scholars. You can stay in my house. I'm wonderful. Come over. I have a donation for you. I don't want the donation. Thank you very much." Make a long story, really long story, sorry, a little shorter. They have a bit of a weird conversation. Rabbi Moshe says to him, "What are you studying?" "I'm studying Sanhedrin." "Oh, Sanhedrin, fantastic." And he starts showing him his genius knowledge in Sanhedrin. And Rabbi Moshe is so excited. Wow, this guy really knows Sanhedrin. He knows the Talmud in incredibly clear understanding of the Gemara. But then he catches himself. But how can you study the Gemara without a kippah, without a yarmulke? He says, well, I don't believe in God and his Torah, and therefore why should I wear a kippah? So I don't believe in any of the 13 principles of faith. He starts listing off the 13 principles of faith in detail, verbatim, and he points and he says why he doesn't believe in each of the 13 principles of faith. I love Torah scholars, he says, but I don't like this. And I love scholarship, I love Torah, but I don't like these mitzvahs and this God. I'm not into that. So Avram Moshe incredulously, he says, hearing the words that you're saying, I should really rent my garments. Torah says you're supposed to rent your garments when you hear words like this. So his scholarly reply was, no, actually the words that I said don't warrant renting your garments. You don't have to rent your garments if someone curses the name of God and he says the 4-letter name of God and he curses God's name a certain way. But the words that I said, although they're heresy, they don't require you to rent your garments. He starts proving with a scholarly way why he was correct. Rabbi Moshe is blown away. He never saw anybody like this, And that day, carriages arrive with horses and noblemen and men and women arrive for a party. They have this party, they're singing and dancing and they're drinking, and everyone got totally drunk until their servants came the next morning and carried them back on their wagons, and they all left. And this Rabbi Moshe, he also got totally drunk, and he slept until the afternoon. And his great nephew, seeing all this, is so upset, and he starts reciting Tikkun Chatzos with great fervor, great pain, and now he puts up the mezuzah with the special kavana, the special meaning that Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem told him to have when he says the words Zecher Avtucha Yabiu Tzukos Reneinu. This kavana, this meaning that he said to have when he puts on the mezuzah, had the power to summon the memories of the person who lives in the house, and everything. He should remember everything that happened to him in his life. When Moshe awoke from his drunken stupor and he sees the mezuzah, he gets very excited, and he starts remembering all of his childhood memories. He says, when I was a child, my mother was a precious, wonderful person. She used to pick me up so I should kiss the mezuzah. And every morning she would pick me up and kiss the mezuzah, and every night she would pick me up and kiss the mezuzah. And when I got a little bigger, I used to go up on a chair myself to kiss the mezuzah. And then my mother would give me my father's tefillin. I should kiss my father's tefillin. My father ridiculed this whole thing. My father was like, what are you telling our son to kiss an animal hide? It's a disgusting thing to do. Just a piece of a parchment. Why are you kissing it? And his mother would cry. So that's how Ramesha grew up, and he started to cry himself, realizing all of the things he had gone through and how far he had left Yiddishkeit. And he begged his great nephew to borrow his talis and film. He borrows his talis and film, and Reb Avram Moshe goes to a town nearby to buy him a pair of tefillin. He buys him a pair of tefillin. Reb Moshe is very touched, and he decides he's going to leave his whole entire lifestyle. And he leave his house in the hands of his servants, and he moves to a small town, and he gets a house near the synagogue. He gives all of his money. He lives there for another 9 months in this little town. He becomes a Baal Tshuva. He doesn't eat regular food, doesn't drink wine, doesn't eat meat, and he lives a life of a sincere penitent for the next 9 months of his life. And a few days before his passing, he gives all of his money to the rabbi for charity. So he should distribute the charity. That's what happened to Ramesha. So the Baal Shem Tov is saying this whole story to Reb Chaim Rappaport. And he tells Reb Chaim Rappaport that it was decreed upon the soul of Ramesha that although the time of Gehenna has long passed before, but still his neshama wasn't at peace for the amount of time some exact amount of time. He said it was decreed that he should be suffering for 117 years. And the time of his suffering was over on that Wednesday of Tammuz when I sent you to go those 36 miles to the east of the city of Lvov. And the place that he was sent to go was the place of the estate of Ramesha. And by studying the laws of blessings, which Ramesha, although he's a great genius, he scorned the blessings. He scorned all the laws of blessings. Because he studied the laws of blessings, he was able to repair all the Torah study of Ramesha. And because the forces of evil, the Klippa, the Satan, saw that the time was over for Ramesha's soul to leave all their they fought hard against using every possible thing they could to prevent Ramesha's soul to be extricated from their hands, and that's why it was so difficult for them to get there. But because he studied the laws of blessings, what he did, he then was able to bring his soul out, and not just his soul, but all the Torah study. For 30 years, he had studied Torah with all his negative thoughts and negative feelings. He was able to extract all the Torah study to be elevated to holiness. Then the Baal Shem Tov said, and this sounds like an aside, but this is unbelievable. This is the conclusion of the story. And Baal Shem Tov said, what was a cup of water, right? What was a cup of water about? The Baal Shem Tov said that when God made the world, God made a separation between the higher spiritual waters, something in Kabbalah called the higher spiritual waters, whatever that means, it's spiritual, something spiritual, and there are lower physical waters in this world. The lower waters, the Zohar says, cry, we want to be before Hashem, we want to be elevated. When a Jew takes water and washes his hands before prayer, or immerses himself in the mikveh, or purifies himself, a woman goes to mikveh, or a man purifies himself for prayer and Torah study, or washes his hands to before saying Hamotzi, or says a bracha before drinking, said the Baal Shem Tov, or says a blessing after the water, after drinking the water. So the water is elevated, the tears, the water cries, want to be elevated. Now the water, the soul of the water, is elevated and it's able to ascend to where it needs to go. So the tears of the water can go on for hundreds and thousands of years until a Jew goes by that specific spot and washes his hands or drinks. So in that village, near the estate of Ramesha, there is a wellspring that is there for 5,900 years, 5,519 years, and it's crying, how come I was never used for, the Jews should be able to use me to say a blessing, to do something holy with me. And on that day, the wellspring was saved through you, said the Baal Shem Tov to Reb Chaim, that by you drinking the water and washing your hands from the water before praying mincha, that was by divine providence, as every creature, said the Baal Shem Tov, is elevated by divine providence in the exact time, the exact place one has to be elevated. So that's the story. Sorry, it's a little long. It took us 40 minutes to say the story. But you see from the story, number one, how far you have to go to help another Jew come closer to God. And you also see from the story this aside at the end, how each creature has its purpose and destiny, and how important and valuable it is. Say a blessing before you eat, wash your hands before mincha. We have no idea what impact we have when we say a blessing. And the Rebbe said clearly how all the sparks of holiness that have to ascend before Mashiach's come have already ascended, and we are ready to see the coming of Mashiach immediately. So, anyways, that's the story. And any comments or questions? All right. Have a good vach, David. Good vach, Rabbi Reber. Good vach, Charles. Good vach, Yonatan. Good vach. Good vach, Yonatan Tzadik. Good vach, Rabbi Baruch. Good vach, Rabbi Beryl. Good vach, Yonatan. Good vach, Rabbi Jeff. Good vach.